Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the North versus South FPL podcast featuring myself, Heath, and my co-host, State. How are you, buddy?
I'm all right. Are you sure you're called Heath, though? Are you sure about
I was desperate to call myself State then. I don't know why.
that?
But yes, no, I am definitely Heath. He is definitely State. And this is definitely the North versus South FPL podcast. We have a very special feature for you today. This is the FPL Team of the Past. And this is going back to the 1988-89 season. State and I were only 4 years old at this point. So I suppose we need to put like a disclaimer in there now. Everything we have done for this podcast has been researched either in the last week or we have your standard football knowledge that most of our generation may have. So please bear with us.
And blame Heath. It was all his idea.
It was all my idea. It was very tough, and I think both.
You wanted to give some back to the Gooner fans, didn't you? I believe. I think that's what it was.
We've been giving them a lot of stick, so it felt kind of like it felt quite a nice thing to kind of go back to their history and celebrate probably the finest moment ever. But let's go back. Let's go back. So it's 1988, and at this very moment in time, there's a lot going on. Neil Warnock has left his managerial position, Scarborough, to join Notts County. Ron Atkinson, he's off to Spain to manage Atletico Madrid to work on that glorious tan of his. Terry Phelan has been omitted from the Wimbledon squad due to cannabis possession. Jan Molby released from prison after 45 days due to reckless driving. And then during the season, Paul Davis of Arsenal banned for 9 matches due to punching Southampton's Glenn Cockerell and breaking his jaw in a 2-2 draw at Highbury. Now, we also have the unfortunate situation of the Heysel disaster directly affecting teams in English football because none of them are able to perform in Europe. Liverpool, Juventus, obviously there was a huge issue with the fans kicking off, and that led to a lot of fans passing away, unfortunately, which led to the ban on English teams. And then again, another unfortunate disaster in the Hillsborough, which led to even more fans passing away due to crowd trouble. And this led to, a negative that led to a lot of positives, saw the transformation of what we now see football now. It's all-seater stadiums, and very rarely do you ever hear of any football fan not coming home after watching a game of football. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of where we are at this very moment in time. Now, the notable things that actually occurred during the season, Nottingham Forest, Brian Clough's Nottingham Forest beat the scum of Luton Town, actually battered them 3-1 in the League Cup final, which was beautiful. I wish I was old enough to remember that. Liverpool poetically had a Merseyside derby for an FA Cup final with Everton, where they won after extra time 3-2. And Arsenal won the league title in the 91st minute with a Mickey Thomas winner. And that meant that they had the exact amount of goal difference to Liverpool, and they won on goals scored to win the league title, which I think has to go down as either the greatest title win, barring maybe the Man City Sergio Aguero moment. I don't know. I think that maybe most will probably say Arsenal's is better because they actually beat the team who they beat the title in that game.
It was a shootout, wasn't it? At the end of the day, I mean,
exactly.
And going to Liverpool and winning 2-0 at Anfield back in those days wasn't an easy feat for any team. I think throughout the entire 80s, to be honest with you. So for Arsenal to go and do that last game of the season, all pressure on them to sort of get that 2-0 win. Liverpool had the luxury of being able to win the game, draw 0-0, draw any score, lose 1-0, lose 2-1. They could have been fine. But and like you said, just that last minute, practically the last kick of the game, Mickey Thomas, charging through the midfield. So for grabs now. Thomas.
Exactly. Brian Moore, absolutely incredible. Now, I just think that if you're unaware of that, I would recommend watching believe the documentary is called 89, and it kind of showcases the Arsenal victory. George Graham basically turned that team around from being a, kind of high-ish, first division team to being title, contenders. And like State said, the idea of going to Anfield at that point and even getting a point was unheard of, let alone going there and winning 2-0. So it's pretty incredible, the achievement that Arsenal actually did there that season. But why are we actually going back to the 88-89 season? Well, what we aim to do today in this podcast is to create a team of the past. We've done this before for a team in the 90s. This is going to be one of our teams of the 80s, as in for this season. We're going to build a squad like you would do for fantasy football of 15 players. We're going to have 100 million budget, and realistically, we're going to work out the team that you would have wanted to have picked in your fantasy league that season, if the fantasy was going at that point. I had a few comments from our previous team of the past. We are picking this from, the last game of the season, so we know everything's happened. We're looking at stats of why we're picking these players, and we're working with that. We can't really pick a team of what we think we would have picked at the beginning of the season, because I think that would have been incredibly tough, and also probably not as much fun. So State and I have picked a northern and a southern team. State has teams such as Aston Villa, Derby County, Everton, Liverpool, Middlesbrough, Newcastle, Nottingham Forest, Norwich, Manchester United, and Sheffield Wednesday. And I have in my southern section Arsenal, Charlton Athletic, Coventry City, Luton Town, Millwall, Queen's Park Rangers, Southampton, Tottenham Hotspur, West Ham United, and Wimbledon. And we can only pick players who are playing for those specific teams within our specific region. So
I think it's clear to say that Heath won't pick anyone from Luton. I definitely won't pick anyone from Sheffield Wednesday in these squads.
Yeah, I think that's very safe to say due to our dislike for those specific teams. So I hope that's clear. And what we'll do is we'll run through our teams. We'll basically explain who we've picked and why we picked them. And at the end, we will come up with an ultimate team of State's team and my team combined. I'm sure we'll have a few arguments at the end to work out exactly who's going to be in there, but that's that fun is to come. So let's start off with the goalkeepers. And State, if you'd like to run through your goalkeepers from the north, that would be brilliant.
Keepers from the north. I mean, there were a lot of good top keepers out there at the time. I mean, probably the big one was Peter Shilton, who was at Derby County at the time. So I mean, Shilts was well, he still is to this day, I believe, most capped England player in terms of goalkeeping appearances, and he was, he'd be an obvious selection. But I didn't go for Peter Shilton because it would also cost a lot of money, and Derby didn't keep that many clean sheets in that season. To be fair, so he wasn't selected. He missed out on selection. Did Shilts. Plus, to be fair, I still think he should have done better in the penalties in the 1990 World Cup shootout against Germany as well. But that's I suppose not happened yet according to this. So yeah, I'm probably not right to sort of say that thing. But yeah, I went for a guy who was at Notts Forest actually. A guy called Steve Sutton, who probably wasn't heard of by many people. I suppose. I mean, he was at Forest. He was there when Shilton were there as his understudy. He was other understudies as well, and he sort of he didn't he didn't really get the number one jersey until later on in the sort of 80s. So Shilton had left, his replacement had left. Hans Sagers got injured, who was playing for Forest at the time. And then Sutton came in and became regular first choice for Brian Clough throughout the back end of the 80s. He was eventually replaced by a very promising goalkeeper who more of us will have heard of, called Mark Crossley, who sort of began taking over in 1990 really. But Steve Sutton was part of the Forest team and played against Liverpool in that horrible disaster at Hillsborough. He was in the game. He'd played in the League Cup finals for Forest as well. And then, I believe it was the 1999 season where he lost his spot, but he was an ever-present in the Forest side. He's my number one keeper. I think he'd be about 4.5 million, I've written down. Forest kept 13 clean sheets that season. So he's my first choice keeper for them for that season, to be fair, because I just thought, decent enough person, value for money is there. So I was pretty much set on that. To be fair, because of that, I just went for just a bit of a nobody sort of goalkeeper as a second choice. There's a guy who was at Derby County called Martin Taylor. He was pretty much loaned out everywhere most of the time. He didn't start very many games because in this season Shilton were their number one, so I just put him in there. So he'd only cost me 4 million, and that would just make up for my second choice keeper. That would for me. I actually,
weirdly, I play cricket with a guy called Steve Sutton, and so weirdly I know this goalkeeper Steve Sutton because this came up on like a random tweet or something where someone said, I can't remember exactly what it was, but it was something he'd had an interview with like Match magazine or Shoot magazine, and some of the stuff he said in there was very strange or funny or something like that. So then I saw it come up on Twitter and sent it straight to my cricket mate saying, "Oh, looks like Steve Sutton's been around for a while," because he's a lovely guy. And Steve, if you listen to this, not the footballer, the cricketer, he's a top guy, and he's quality. And I sent it to my cricket mates, and the only reason why I still remember that is because it's a picture on my phone that is near other pictures that I use regularly, and it just kind of makes me laugh. So I know of Steve Sutton.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, so it's good start there.
Who's in there for you then? Who have you got?
Well, I'll start with my reserve. I always think best till last, mate, which obviously you haven't thought that way. But
no, I think you set out your stall straight away. You're going with fireworks.
So I'm going to start off with my reserve goalkeeper, and I think that it's fair to say that he probably wouldn't have been anyone's pick the year before because the team got promoted, so he wouldn't have been eligible. So this is Millwall's goalkeeper, Brian Horn. I've never heard of him before. I did the research, but basically Millwall got promoted the year before with, I believe, Aston Villa and Middlesbrough, and Millwall literally tore the league apart in the first, first 3 or 4 months of the season. They were top of the league at one point. I think that the Millwall fans were probably thinking of maybe doing what would be deemed as a Watford, because years before that, Watford did a similar thing when they finished second after promotion. Millwall kind of must have thought they were kind of on their way to finishing high, and maybe even, you never know, winning the league. And
Norwich, I believe, started the season well, didn't they?
That's right. And Brian Horn was integral. So they kept 11 clean sheets in the end, 8 of them at home. So obviously the old den was quite intimidating for teams to go to. But unfortunately for Millwall, they ended the season pretty poorly and they didn't win a game for the last something like 10 or 15 games. In the end, they finished 10th, which is a great season after promotion, but maybe they were pretty disappointed about that. But they, I've put Brian Horn down as a 4.5 million goalkeeper because his first season in the top division, Millwall had never been in the first division before this year. So I don't think he would have been rated at 5. I think he would have been rated at 4.5. I think 4 would have been too cheap. So 4.5, I'm working with 0.5s this time, unlike the last team of the past. So that's my reserve. And then my number one goalkeeper is Steve Grizovic, who is basically a Coventry City legend. I've put him down as 5 million because I think that Coventry were quite an established first division team at that point. He got 12 clean sheets. I mean, his nose alone probably kept out a few goals. I can only think that him and Gordon Cowans must have been going for nose of the year. I don't know how many times either of them must have broken their noses, but I remember they were pretty massive.
I think Grizovic is definitely a contender for how do I say this politely? Contender for the least attractive team over the Premiership era.
Yeah. I think, yeah.
Even Brian Gunn probably would compete in the goalkeeper stakes, I think, a little bit.
Yeah, I think Oggy probably understands that, and I think his game was the ugly side of things. That's why he played for a team like Coventry City, where, let's be honest, not a huge amount really happened for them, apart from obviously the FA Cup win they'd had a couple of years before that. But yeah, he was a Coventry City legend, and at the time, actually, State and I were growing up. He was still playing for Coventry into the mid-90s, so he had a great career with them. And I always remember him being a very solid goalkeeper, even when he was playing in the 90s. But in this season, it seemed like he was integral to Coventry having a good season that year. Top half, solid.
Yeah, good season for Coventry, that.
Yeah. And they didn't, they were one of the harshest defences. They kept a fair amount of clean sheets, but I don't think they tore the division apart or anything. But Steve Grizovic, numero uno for the Southern team. So we now move on to the defenders, and like a normal FPL team, we have to pick 5 of them. I'll start with my cheap defender, and this is a 4 million defender from my perspective, someone that I'm sure everyone's familiar with, even if you are, if you're not really into 80s football. I'm sure you've heard of him if you were into 90s football. This is Neil Ruddock. And the reason why I've chosen him, at the time, he was 20 years old. It was his first proper season. He came up with Millwall, and halfway through the season signed for Southampton. He wasn't really getting much for Millwall, so moving to Southampton, he got fair few appearances there. He scored 4 goals from centre half, but realistically, he's not in there for goals. He's in there for his price tag, which at 4 million, I think, is fairly reasonable as a young defender. So then my next defender, which I guess, again, another defender who probably hit the heights of top division football in the 90s, but was just about kind of getting there, was John Scales, who I've got in there. He was at Wimbledon at the time. I think he scored 5 goals from centre half, 11 clean sheets for Wimbledon. Put him down at 5 million. I think, again, he was pretty young, but I think he was a solid Wimbledon centre half, played most games. From my perspective, I think it's quite tough to pick defenders from the Southern section, if I'm being totally honest with you. But those two, so John Scales and Neil Ruddock, were probably the harder choices. The next one I'm going for, really down to the fact that he's on penalties as a defender. And I'm thinking to myself, even though he didn't score as many, it's always good to have a defender who's on set pieces, especially penalties. So I think when we did our team of the past last time, I had Julian Dix down, and I think he scored a fair few penalties in that season. But it was more about the idea of, like, let's look at it from the perspective of, if you're picking your team, you want to have someone who you think is going to be a danger to the opposition, someone who's going to score you random points out of nowhere. So someone who's on penalty duty.
He was sometimes a danger in terms of his tackling as well.
True. But that's the reason why I didn't go for Julian Dix this year, because unfortunately he wasn't on penalty duty, and he was a danger to himself and other people. I've gone for a guy called Brian Kilcline for Coventry City. So backing up the Steve Grizovic kind of claim, he also got 12 clean sheets, but he was on penalties. He scored 4 goals, 3 of them were penalties. I put him at 5.5 million, probably a little bit generous. But if Scales is 5, then I put him at 5.5. Maybe I could have put him at 5. But, last time I got a bit of stick for underrating some of these values. So that's my third defender. My fourth defender is someone who I'm pretty sure, again, a bit like Neil Ruddock, most people should know or have heard of, is Tony Adams, who was captain of Arsenal, obviously the title-winning team. He got 4 goals, 13 clean sheets, but I think it's more the fact of Adams probably, as one of Arsenal's better players at that point, would have got bonus points. I've put him at 6 million. I don't think I need to put him any higher, because to be fair, Arsenal weren't title winners the year before or the year before that. So I think it's probably a bit generous at 6 million, but
yeah, I think you could have gone 5.5, but
probably. But it kind of tells its own story that I've got plenty of money to work with, that I'm overrating these players. But Adams was, again, there were other Arsenal defenders that I could have gone with, like Nigel Winterburn or Lee Dixon, but I thought Adams was the better option. And my final defender, which is a real absolute bonus for me, that, to be honest, when I looked at defenders, I thought this is going to be quite tough. And then when I saw him come up on the top goal scorer list, I was like, wow, he's number one on my defenders list. And that's Terry Fenwick, who was at Tottenham Hotspur at the time, and he's on penalties from defence. So he got 8 goals and six of them were penalties. He got 10 clean sheets. Again, maybe I think I got the value right here. 5.5 million. I don't know if we would have known at the beginning of the season that he would have been on penalties. I'm not too sure. But I think I probably could say if he's 6, then maybe Adams is 5.5 or Kilcline's 5 or whatever. But what I'm saying is he's not far away from probably being a 6 the season later. Or 6
Spurs weren't doing much anyway, were they, to be fair? So it's not like they were mid-table the season before, so it's not like you'd have fancied them to all of a sudden become. I mean, although they spent a lot of money that summer did, Spurs, they brought in players, the likes of Gaza, Paul Stewart, and that, and they were expected to do better than what they probably ended up doing. But I think you've got value right there at 5.5 with him.
Yeah, so they're my 5 defenders. Now, I do have other mentions for midfielders and forwards, but because I was really struggling with defenders and goalkeepers, I mean, I guess for goalkeepers, one shout out could go to David Seaman, but I did think at time when I was looking at, oh my God, I think I just said, instead of saying at the time, I said at time. Because I'm listening to you way too much. Jesus.
Anyway, it's good being didn't go with Seaman, because it was Lukic who was the Arsenal keeper that season.
No. So I was going to say Seaman at QPR. He would have been. I thought when I first looked at the teams, I thought, oh, QPR, good. Their defense was looking pretty decent. Who's their goalkeeper? Oh, it's David Seaman. And I thought, oh, he must have been young, so he'll be my cheap keeper. But actually, he wasn't as young. And he had been around for a few years. So
established.
I didn't think I could justify the 4.5 million tag, and therefore I didn't put him in. So I guess he's the only other person I probably could have put in out of the goalkeepers and defenders. So yeah, that's my Southern goalkeepers and defenders.
Leads nice onto my defence then. Good defence coming up here. Very good defence. I'm gonna go straight in with the big man, Gary Ablett. Liverpool centre half or full back. He played as well a little bit. He could play full back or centre half, but he'd been in Liverpool since sort of the mid-90s. Debuted as a youngster in '86, and basically then started holding his own towards the back end of the '80s. I think it was the sort of 88-89 season when he really sort of started to play pretty much every game. I've put him down as a sort of a playing for the best team, and I put him down as 5.5 because he wasn't sort of the main sort of centre defender for them. They'd had Alan Hansen, Steve Nicol, Gary Gillespie and stuff like, and people like that. And then they had Steve Staunton playing at full back, David Burrows, they signed for this season as well. But yeah, Ablett basically became a centre half for them, and he was well established in for Liverpool. And yeah, in that season, I think he missed only a couple of games, and Liverpool kept 17 clean sheets that season. So he didn't score many goals, but he part of the team that kept 17 clean sheets. That's a solid centre half for you, or when he played full back or centre half. And so he's my main man. I'd put him at 5.5 million, I think, because he wasn't the main sort of player there, but he still played for the best team. So it's it's some of that I'm thinking would have been that. Gary Ablett, just for the fact, he then got sold to Everton by Graham Souness in the early 90s. And he's become one of the very, I think maybe the only, I think he's the only player who's won the FA Cup with both Everton and Liverpool. I think that still sort of exists. I don't think there's anyone else who's won the Cup with Everton or Liverpool. No, they won't, because Everton haven't won the Cup since then. So and I doubt there's anyone who, that was a good stat for him. Other defenders then, Steve Bruce is my next one. So he was at Manchester United at that time. United kept 15 clean sheets that season. So Bruce was pretty much ever present. He scored 4 goals, not quite at the peak of his goal scoring powers. He got that like a year or two later. But Bruce was signed from Norwich, established himself in the top flight with Norwich for a number of seasons, wanted to go to one of the big clubs and went there, I think, for just under $1 million. Really, really big. And, he went on to be Man United captain later down the line. But Bruce was an integral part to Fergie's defence. I've again put him down as a 5.5 million, to be fair. I don't think he's cheaper than that. I don't think he will quite the 6 million side sort of player yet either, though. Then my next defender was a newcomer to the Premier League, and he went on to go play for Arsenal and stuff. But this guy was pretty much like a player that they went on to try and bring in to maybe fully replace Bruce, I suppose. And it's Andy Linnigan, who was playing for Norwich. So it was his first season in the Premier League in 88-89 season. He signed from Oldham Athletic, who were in the lower leagues. He'd been at Leeds before that as well. But then, his first season with Norwich, and, he had a great season. He scored 4 goals. They kept 12 clean sheets. Norwich had a good season. And I thought, as a newcomer to the league as well, no top flight experience, and I'm thinking he's a 4.5 million, at most sort of player, really, to be fair. I think maybe he could have been one of our current Norwich guys, Omar Badele. It could be 4 million.
Any excuse to get him in there, eh?
Yeah, they're always getting that man in. We need to get him on this podcast, I'll tell you. So I put him in at 4.5, so I think that's nice. Then my other 2 defenders are both Notts Forest defenders. So I've got Stuart Pearce, the man, psycho.
Was he in your other one, your other team?
He was actually. Yeah, he was in my other one as well. So,
how much has he paid you?
Well, to be fair, the guy
threatened you. Threatened
No. We're good pals, me and Stuart, real good pals. I've always supported him. But yeah, I mean, he was getting into the England team then, and really established as a top quality full back. He scored 6 goals, 13 clean sheets for Forest that season. Forest had a good season. They came third in the league, season before they come third as well. So they were consistently in that top 3. They would be coming with Forest, good side. And Pearce was a big part of that. And because he scored goals, he took set pieces, penalties. Although he didn't score a penalty that season. I believe Nigel Clough was on them, to be honest with you. But Pearce is going to be a 5.5 million, that's for sure. And then another player, probably one who's, not everyone will know this guy, that's for sure, especially in the 90s. You used to get him in your stickers all the time. But there was a guy called Steve Chettle. Don't know if you remember Steve Chettle.
Yeah, he had the rosy red cheeks, didn't he?
Definitely, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And he was part of the youth setup at Forest, and that he made his first sort of proper time in the senior season in the 86-87 season. It just became a faithful for Forest, really. He wasn't the known one though, because they had Pearce, they had Des Walker there. Those were the big Forest sort of defenders everyone knew about and were talking about. So he'd have gone under the radar at 4.5 million, definitely. I'm thinking he scored 2 goals that season and there were 13 clean sheets. So definitely the man's in there.
Where's Nigel Pearson?
He's not there.
Unbelievable.
Why would he be there?
Sheffield Wednesday.
Exactly. Why would he be there? I didn't even look at one single player Wednesday. I know Dave Hurst would have probably have scored some goals maybe that season, but nah, ludicrous decision to play anyone from that club.
Well, I apologise, Nigel. I'm a big fan of yours. You were great ambassador for Watford FC, so I apologise on State's behalf. But it did look like you just about stayed up from relegation by a few points.
Don't apologise on my behalf about Sheffield Wednesday player, right? Don't do that. This is just wrong. You know, are you going to be calling out Luton players? No, shocking behaviour. I tell you. Yeah. You're just trying to get a rise. I can see it already, and it's working obviously. So that's the defenders. I'm going to carry on with my midfield actually. So I've got some cracking midfielders here, and that's not just being big-headed. It's just stating facts. You know, I like to be like Rafa Benitez. I want to talk about facts, and let's talk about them. The midfield is good, although there may be slight contention about whether one of the midfielders is a forward, but then again, given today's modern FPL, then I don't think
I've got one of them myself.
Yeah, no, that's okay then. Maybe we can let each other off then if that's the case. Who knows? But you know, we'll see about that. So let me go with the non-contentious ones first of all. All right. So I'm going to go with my cheap one this time. So I'm going with a lad who became an absolute England legend in the 1990 World Cup, because he scored a great goal against Belgium, you know, and he scored against Cameroon as well, and he just then became a big stalwart for England during those years. And it's David Platt. So David Platt basically played for Crewe in Division 4 in sort of from 1985 to 1988, and he'd made a name for himself as a goal scoring midfielder, you know, and then so Aston Villa signed him in 88 for quite a big amount of money for someone like him, 200 grand it was, and he was a straight away, you know, part of the team that helped him get promoted at the back end of that season. So they signed him in February before the transfer deadline, because back then you could sign players up until, I think it was sort of back end of February time, couldn't you? There were no transfer window break. It was just, you could sign players up until then, if you remember the old champ manager. So he was part of the Villa side that got promoted. So in the 88-89 season, Villa were back in the division, and it was his first year in the Premier League. And he helped them stay up, you know, basically. And, you know, he scored goals for him. And he was, and I think, you know, he would have been a cheap player because he was unknown quantity. He'd been playing Crewe Alexander in Division 4s and Division 3s. Only Division 4. And then he was playing all of a sudden in the top flight, you know, within a season. So he scored 7 goals in his first season in the top flight. So great return. I think he'd have been cheap. He'd have been a 5.5 million with David Platt, because he didn't have the backing. He'd been playing in the 4th division. You know, who's going to make him expensive, to be fair, at the end of the day? I mean, how expensive was Jamie Vardy in his first season in Premier League after being playing at Fleetwood? Probably not at all. So Platt is going to be, you know, less than that. So Platt is like the big sort of, he's my like real sneak cheap midfielder who's going to bag me a great season with some goals. That's who Platt is. Okay. Then the other three are far more established ones. So we've got Kevin Sheedy, who was playing for Everton at the time. He'd been playing at Everton for the entire 80s. And, you know, he was an Irish lad. He scored against England actually in the 1990 World Cup. He scored the equalising goal. But yeah, he was playing at Everton, well established at Everton, made a load of appearances for them. I think 274 appearances overall for him. Scored plenty of goals. This season he scored 8 goals. He would have got assists as well. You know, it's been difficult to find assists, but you know, he was part of Everton's title-winning teams in the mid-80s. Part of the Winners' Cup team that won. So Sheedy was one of the top sort of midfielders or top wide players in the league probably for a number of years, I would say. And you know, he scored 8 goals. He'll have got some assists. You know, he's probably gonna cost you a bit of money. Given today's market, probably, you know, as I said, he'll be sort of 9 million sort of player, I reckon, most likely. I'd put him at that. That's how good Kevin Sheedy was for those years. I think people have got to realise Everton were a top side in those middle to back end of 80s. You know, they were fancied to win the league. They had a bad season in 88, 89, to be honest with you, because, you know, they didn't have a great season at all from their point of view. But, you know, I think at the same time, you know, Sheedy was still, you know, ever present, scored goals, created goals, you know, and was definitely a solid one to have in there. Then we've got, you know, the big man. Everyone will know this man. You know, he's probably now more famous for his raps than he is for his playing days. People maybe forget about that a little bit. You should like this guy, because he was big at Watford before he made the big time and moved to Liverpool, basically. So it's John Barnes.
Why is he not your last midfielder? He's the best midfielder out of any of them. Because he should be the best till last.
Well, I've told you this. I like to do my fireworks earlier on. And
get them out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. Plus, I wanted to save my contentious one of midfielder, maybe attacker.
Hold on. What? So Sheedy and Barnes aren't your contentious ones?
No, they were wide players. And they were proper wide players in a 4-4-2 formation. They weren't playing this 4-3-3 where the wide three players get to be played as midfielders nowadays. So, you know, so stop trying to wind up again.
Barnes would have been your Mo Salah, wouldn't he? Right now, he's definitely Barnes. 12 million, right?
He's not 12 million. 12 million. He'd been playing with crappy Watford for previous few seasons, so you know he wasn't even playing in top flight football all the time. So I think but it wasn't quite that at that point. I think right. So. I mean, yeah. Let's hear what his price is in a bit then. Yeah, we'll see. But yeah, John Barnes scored 8 goals. I mean, even in the first game of the season, he got 2 assists from watching the sort of season review, which you can find on YouTube if you want to have a look at that. But so he'll got plenty of assists that season. He'll got bonus points. He was the man. He was just destroying teams. I mean, and I remember that goal he scored earlier in the 80s for England, against Brazil. That was what Barnes was capable of. He could score goals, some fantastic goals, and just did so much really on that front. But yeah, he was big for Liverpool. He was a key player for them. He arrived at Liverpool with a lot of good other top players, and part of a side that had won the league the season before, obviously. And I think he got PFA Player of the Year. So yeah, Barnes is definitely going to be an expensive one. Don't get me wrong. I'm putting him in at 9.5. I am. So,
what? No chance.
What?
You can put $1 million on top of that. Thank you very much. He's at least 10.5. Come on. You'll find out in a bit when I talk about my midfield why you should be more than that. Come on. Yeah. Are you working with 100 million now? What's your budget?
I've got money to spend. So I've got money.
There you go.
Money
left, Barnes has got to be the most expensive player in the game. He was unbelievable.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I suppose so, but he wouldn't have got big point returns because he scored 8. He only got 8 goals. He probably got about 20 assists. Yeah, but you look at today's midfielders and people like De Bruyne gets 15 goals and 20 assists. So it's he wasn't quite at those point scoring levels, but the game was different. I know what you're saying, but I think there'd been more. It's not quite, but I'll put him up to 10.5. That's fine. I've got money. I've got money spare, so nice. No problem. Nice. So let's go on to my my final midfield man. Now I'm going with Brian McClair.
No. He's definitely a striker.
He's not a striker.
Him and Mark Hughes were up front. They were the strike force for Man United in the 80s.
McClair played in a number 10 role behind him.
Yeah, number 10 is in a striker.
It's not in the modern day.
Back in those days, they only played 4-4-2. They didn't play 4-5-1. Nah.
If you go on his Wikipedia, it says forward and midfielder. So,
yeah, because he dropped into midfield when he got older.
No, well, who said that he didn't do it then? I'm not having it. Brian McClair's a midfielder.
All right.
He's a midfielder
I wish
today.
I'd gone with Ian Dublin as my centre back before.
that was stupid. No. Claire played in midfield as well. All right, so I'm not having it. Okay.
All right. Okay.
He's the main man. So yeah, because they had Peter Davenport as well. So McClare sometimes dropped in at midfield, and Davenport and Mark Hughes, who came back from Barcelona, went in there. But yeah, so McClare, he's got 10 goals that season. So yeah, goal scoring midfielder. That's Frank Lampard-esque, really, that guy. Let's put him in that bracket, shall we? So yeah, and United clipped some clean sheets that season, so we've got some clean sheet bonus points for that, in my opinion. Yeah. So yeah.
You got away with one there. I'll give you that one. I'll give you that one.
You give me that one.
I'm generous.
You won't give me anything. It's just facts, okay? There's no way. Ryan McClare's playing that number 10 role. Grealish plays it, Foden plays it, Sterling plays it, and they're all classed as midfielders in the modern game. So I've used it to my benefit of the whole current formation playing for that one, really. Whereas the previous one with Barnes, they have used the old format. He was an actual left midfielder. Hypocrisy there, guys. You'll find it here first.
Only slightly.
In terms of money wise as well, McClare's cool 8.5 million. Yeah, steady away. That's my midfield. Awesome.
Lovely stuff. No, it's very good. It's very good. I got to be honest with you. John Barnes he's definitely going into the ultimate team. There's no doubt about it.
There's about 5 or 6 of my team so far that are probably going in that already, and we're not even gone to my strikers.
But Brian McClare certainly isn't, because he's not a midfielder. But okay, John Barnes definitely is.
Brian McClare's he's got a better chance than
he might get in as a striker, but not as a midfielder.
You've got Paul Davis headbutting, punching players in your side, I bet. Yeah, let's find out.
He did his suspension. He did his time. All right, he knows what he's done. But all right, okay, let's talk about a proper midfielder, all right? A genuine group of midfielders who are in a midfield, like it should be. Back in the days when 4-4-2 ruled the roost, and if you're a midfielder, you're a midfielder. I'll start off with my cheap midfielder, and I'm being generous again. Now, I don't feel like I should have been after some of this nonsense I'm getting from State.
Nonsense,
but
man.
I'll start with Dennis Wise, who is my cheap midfielder. I've put him down as 5.5, and the reason why is because he had a good season the year before, and he scored something like 13 goals. But it was I think it might have been a one-off season, really. I don't know if he obviously took set pieces, but I don't know, really. I've always known him as a holding midfielder rather than an attacking midfielder. But he did well the season before. This season, he didn't do so well. I think he only scored like 5 or 6 goals. But he's cheap. He's my second or third sub every week, and I was quite happy to keep him there. Then I'm going to move on to another player who made.
Who's that again? Who have you put in at 5.5?
Dennis Wise.
Dennis Wise, 5. I'm rocking my brain here. No.
Why not?
He scored 13 goals the previous season in the top flight.
Yeah, and he's a holding midfielder, so he probably would have been 4.5.
Right. Sorry, I'm not letting you carry on just this moment. I've got an exact player from the modern day to basically chump you out of the park with this one. Okay?
Go on.
So he scored 13 goals last season, right?
Yeah.
In the previous season. And you're keeping it at 5.5 million.
Exactly. Because he's a holding midfielder. He just had a good season last year.
Look,
he didn't have a good season the year before that.
I'm sorry, it's just not happening. No. Look, right. He's like a modern day then James Ward-Prowse, basically, who was like 5.5 million last season or something like that. And he scored, goals and that, and all of a sudden he gets shot up to like 6.5 million already. So you can add $1 million up to Wisey right now.
That's not a problem.
No midfielder who scores 13 goals in one season comes in the following season at 5.5 million. To be fair, he should be 7 million. 7 million.
Okay, that's fine. He's now gone from being my cheap midfielder to my kind of, he's not my cheap midfielder anymore. And you're going to laugh at it.
He's 7 million. Definitely.
Okay. All right then.
Ludicrous.
Probably would take him out now. Sorry, too much, but I can afford him. Now, the next one I'm going to pick, and also, by the way, Dennis was quite young at this point, just want to point out. But anyway, another young midfielder who scored 9 goals, and I'm putting at 6.5 million because he's young, is Matt Le Tissier. Now, I don't think you can have any issues with that because he didn't have a good season the year before. He was very young in that Southampton team. This was his first proper season. I think 6.5 million is fine for him, really. Probably would have been cheaper. And you think about Harry Kane being 4.5 million when he first came into the game in the Premier League. 6.5 is pretty generous. Hands up, go on.
How is Matt Le Tissier a midfielder if Brian McClare isn't?
Oh, come on. Matt Le Tissier is of course a midfielder. I can tell you, I can tell you categorically he's a midfielder. The reason why is because the other person that I want to put as midfielder was Rod Wallace. And then I thought, actually, I can't justify that because he scored 17 goals. I thought, I need to get him in there or something. And then I actually realised, well, I can't justify that. And then I looked at who other strikers they had. They had about 2 or 3 other strikers. They had like Paul Rideout. And they had, what do you call it? They had the other Wallace as well. So they had
3
Danny
Wallaces.
Wallace and Rod Wallace, yeah. And they had Ray Wallace at the back.
Yeah, they all 3 played in one game together in that season.
But Matt Le Tissier was definitely a centre midfielder. Like that is just a fact. Brian McClare was a centre forward at that point. He dropped back as a midfielder when he got old and, you know, just not as good. But Matt Le Tissier was a centre midfielder without a doubt. Anyway, so he's in there at 6.5 million. He got 9 goals that season. Obviously, there's more to come from him. And he goes into the very strange category of being in both my team of the past from what was the season we did? Was it the 95, 96 season, was it? Or 94, 95?
94, 95 it was.
Yeah. So Le Tissier goes into both teams, which is quite unique. So him and Wise are the cheaper midfielders that I've got. And then I'm going to move on to Paul Merson. So again, slightly controversial because he was wearing the number 10 shirt all throughout the season. I thought he could be down as a striker, but actually when I looked at the stats, he was classed as a midfielder. So I've put him in at 8.5 million because he was still very young, but he got Young Player of the Year that season to justify his pick. Got 10 goals. Now, if you're going to question that and you're going to say, actually, Merson's an attacker, whatever, I've got Brian Marwood as a backup. He got 9 goals and was penalty taker. But
I think, you know, Merson did play more this season playing, but yeah, I think, you know, I can't be too much of a hypocrite given my McClare shout really, so I'm gonna have to let you have this one.
Yeah,
really.
Brian Marwood probably would have gone into my team, but I think he got injured at the end of the season when it all kicked off, and his stats weren't as good as Merson's goals wise, and Merson getting Young Player of the Year that year kind of took him over the line into the team. Obviously, Arsenal had a group of midfielders. He had David Rocastle, he had Mickey Thomas. Probably could have picked any of those, but realistically, goals were the things that set me over the edge with
Kevin
Merson.
Richardson.
Yeah, Kevin Richardson too. Yeah. But yeah, Paul Merson goes in there at 8.5. And now we go on to what I think is the most talented player in the overall. He may not make it into the overall team at the end, but he'll be the most talented player we mentioned tonight, without a doubt. Paul Gascoigne. Ladies and gentlemen, Paul Gascoigne. The guy is just a genius. Only scored 9 goals. I'm sure he got a lot of assists, but unfortunately, assists weren't really a stat in the late 80s. I would imagine he would have got bonus points regularly to kind of like back up my claim. And he also scored with a sock. His boot fell off during the North London derby, and he scored with his without his boot on, which is
that was his first goal for Spurs.
Exactly.
Football, yeah.
Which is, I mean, it kind of he made it look very easy, but it's still quite impressive to do that in a top division game. So
Yeah.
I put Gascoigne at 8 million because although the name Gascoigne, it was a big transfer from Newcastle to Spurs, but obviously didn't score that many goals, with only 6 goals, and didn't score many goals for Newcastle before. And State's shaking his head.
8 million, seriously.
Well, what would you put that then?
Well, he'd just been signed for a substantial amount of money in the previous ring. Now, in those days, and I'm talking millions of pounds here, and
2 million, right?
And you put him in at 8 million, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if anything, I should have put him at 2 million. How much he was paid for him?
Well, it don't work like that. Otherwise, we're screwed, wouldn't we? This 100 million budget would be gone by some having Paul Pogba in the side right now, wouldn't it? You know?
All right. So, what would you put Gascoigne in? Really, given that his stats don't line up, I actually think you've actually named the player I was going to compare him to, like Paul Pogba, unbelievably talented midfielder. But what is his value in the current FPL, kind of situation at the moment? What is he valued at? He's only valued at 7.5 or 8 million or something like that, 8.5. He's not valued that high because he's probably one of the most talented players in the league, but he doesn't get a huge amount of goals and assists. Therefore you don't pick him in your team, basically. And the whole idea of dropping the value is to kind of get them to want you to get them into the team. So I think Gascoigne 8 million seems reasonable.
8.5, I'll negotiate up to.
Okay, all right. Well, that's fine.
You're not going to accept 9, so I'll go 8.5. Yeah.
And then we're gonna move directly from. I mean, what I like to say, I think Gascoigne is probably the most talented player we're going to mention tonight, but I think this guy is not far behind, as in a talent. I think his roommate for England, certainly, but may have been for Spurs as well. Chris Waddle, who was another Geordie playing for Tottenham at the time, he unfortunately had 3 poor seasons going into this season, goals-wise. But this season, he scored 14 goals from midfield. I've put him at 10 million, which now I'm thinking actually it's quite a lot, considering that Barnsley's not, from your perspective, only going in underneath 9.5. So I think I'm being quite generous with Waddle at 10. But, I mean, Waddle was the man. And if you watch the highlights for, Tottenham, it seems like he either scored or assist most of their goals at that point. So, yeah. and then he got his big move to Marseille for 4.5 million after this season, I think the season later. But the guy, I mean, you probably know quite a lot about him from his Sheffield Wednesday time. But he's just calm, composed, took all the set pieces. You could rely on him. And he had a very good season with Spurs this year. And again, if he doesn't go into the ultimate team, I'll be shocked.
You might be shocked.
So that's my 5. So we got Dennis Wise, Matt Letizia, Paul Merson, Paul Gascoigne, and Chrissy Waddle. And now we're going to move on to the centre forwards. And I'm going to start with a guy who came up with Millwall and basically was fantastic target man, scored 13 goals and was probably the linchpin behind them pushing forward. I mean, his striking partner was probably unlucky not to make it in here, but only because he scored more goals than his partner. And it's Tony Cascarino, who was, basically a centre forward who probably doesn't really get mentioned that much nowadays, unless you're from Ireland, because obviously he did a good job as an Englishman playing for Ireland back in the days when Ireland was made up of talented English players who couldn't make it into the English team. So Cascarino scored 13 goals for Millwall. I put him in at 6.5 million because Millwall just come up. He hadn't been in the top league before. I think 6.5 is fair enough. Again, his striking partner was Teddy Sheringham, who was very young at the time. Scored maybe 1 or 2 goals less, but my perspective, I thought Cascarino scoring more goals. And again, when I saw Millwall playing in the highlights, it seemed like Cascarino was in and around most of the goals. So I'm happy with him in there. There's my cheap striker. Then slightly more expensive, David Speedie at Coventry City, someone who annoyingly always used to score against Watford back in the day, 14 goals for Coventry. I've put him down at 7.5 million. Probably could be a little bit more, but I couldn't really tell you that. I thought 7.5 was fine. When I look at teams nowadays, you look at strikers around Coventry's kind of level, I think 7.5 is fine. Mikel Antonio kind of style. And the final striker is, again, he's going to be in the final team without a doubt, has to be, because this guy, well, not only did he score 23 goals this season, he was the first name on my team sheet, and he also scored and assisted in the title deciding game. It's Alan Smith, who honestly, again, if you know football now, you know it very well, especially if you're of state and my generation, where we saw Alan Smith as a big man striker and probably didn't really think too much of him because he was slow, and big men striker are unfashionable. They're not the kind of strikers you really wanted at that point. But him now in his professional career as, you know, journalist and a pundit for Sky Sports, I think personally does a really good job, very composed. But I was really surprised at how good he was this season. 23 goals is incredible. And I put him down at 9 million. And I think 9 million is probably, you would deem cheap because of his overall amount of goals, but it's only because he scored a few goals the season before, but he got nowhere near 23 goals. I think he scored double figures maybe the year before that and year before that, but Arsenal weren't a title chasing team. They probably were in the Leicester category like they are now. And Vardy, for instance, is someone who's, you know, around 10.5 million or something like that in the current, or around that. I've put Smith down at 9 million because I don't think anyone saw this coming. He just hit the ground running. I think after 10 games, he'd scored 9 goals or something like that. And yeah, he just carried it on going. So yeah, he's my third striker. That's a no-brainer. And I have some other mentions. So you'll see a theme with the first two, both midfielders, Kingsley Black and Danny Wilson, both didn't make the final 5.
Mainly, no, Danny Wilson didn't.
Yeah, well, mainly down to the fact that both of them are Luton Town. So I didn't really care what their stats were. As soon as I saw that scummy badge, I knew that they weren't making it. And Paul Stewart was in my team. I put him in there. I thought he was my controversial midfield forward, right? Gascoigne replaced him. I want Gascoigne in there. And the reason why is because Paul Stewart, probably a very good football player at that point, you know, moved from Man City. He was like one of the big signings that summer. Someone that all the Spurs fans are probably really looking forward to seeing. But Gascoigne's the player you want to see. When you pick your FPL team, you want to have players like Paul Merson, Chris Waddle, Paul Gascoigne, you know, even Matt Letizia, players like that you're looking forward to watching their game. You know, that's how I pick my FPL team. I want players that I look forward to seeing their team at the weekend and seeing how they get on. And Gascoigne wins over Stewart all day long. Probably didn't get the amount of goals and assists that you would have wanted, but still enough that you want him in your team. So he won it over Stewart. And then my forwards, I have down Paul Williams at Charlton, Mark Falco at QPR, John Fashanu at Wimbledon, and Rob Wallace at Southampton. None of those made it. I think, realistically, Cascarino being cheaper kind of won him over into my team. He scored more goals than all of those as well, but only by a goal or two. And Speedy scored and assisted quite a few goals for Coventry. Watching again the highlights, Speedy seemed to be in and around it all. So that's my Southern team. So just to reiterate, I've got Steve Ogrizovic and Barry Horn in goal, Terry Fenwick, Tony Adams, John Scales, Brian Kilcline, Neil Ruddock in defence, Chris Waddle, Paul Gascoigne, Paul Merson, Matt Letizia, Dennis Wise midfield, and Alan Smith, David Speedy, and Tony Cascarino. So State, who have you got?
Well, I realised I made an error and didn't tell you my fifth midfielder before I passed it on to you last time. So I need to do that for starters. It was a cheap midfielder as well. Andy Townsend, playing at Norwich at the time, you know, good solid player was Townsend. Didn't get loads and loads of points, but you know, he had an all right season, scored 3 or 4 goals for him. And yeah, I mean, it was first season for Norwich. He'd been at Southampton the season before. So hard tackling, hard working guy, you know, not a big point scorer, 5.5 million. There you go, job's good. Not like a Dennis Wise 5.5 million, because he didn't score 13 goals the season before, if you get me. So there you go, there's your comparison as well. Thank you. Good night, Vienna. Win for stay, that is. So now I can go on to my forward line since I messed up just then. So I've got 3 quality forwards here. Scored goals that season. So I'm
Brian
starting.
McClare.
No,
Next.
He's already in my midfield, so don't be like that. No need for that now, Heath. There's no need for naughtiness, okay? So my first one, I'm gonna save the best to last this time round, just because I will, just to make you happy.
Perfect.
Okay. So my first one is Dean Saunders, who was playing at Derby County this season. Now Saunders had been he'd played in the top division before with Oxford. He'd scored 12 goals from the 87-88 season, but this still went down. He started the season in the second division. He didn't join Derby until October time, so he didn't play in as many games as as some of the others. But he got 14 goals in 30 games in the 88-89 season, which helped Derby finish top half. The fifth place. If he'd have played a full season, he'd have scored 20 plus goals, I reckon, easily. And he'd have been competing for the top scorer for Golden Boot award. So Saunders was, at that point, he I think he was early 20s, 24, 25. So he was not even at his striker's prime yet. But he had an eye for goal. He had pace, and he hassled defenders. So Saunders is going in there. I think he'd have been about, I think he'd have been an 8.5 sort of striker, I think, at that point, Saunders. I don't think he'd have been more than that. He wouldn't have been any less though either. So that's what I'm thinking. He that with his 14 goals. Then I've got my bargain, and this guy's the bargain buy of the season for any team. Okay, I don't care who you think, and chances are he should make it into our ultimate team, because we need someone as a bargain in there for the money. He was the 3rd top scorer in the league. He played for Middlesbrough FC, who got relegated still that season. But his name was Bernie Slaven. Bernie Slaven. I mean, if you can't find a more Scottish name than that, you're never going to find one, okay? Now, Bernie Slaven played for Middlesbrough for a long time, 85 to 93. And this season, Middlesbrough got promoted from Middlesbrough the season before. They'd gone basically from the 3rd division all the way to the 1st division within 2 seasons. So he's going to be coming in as a bargain player. He's coming in at 6 million tops. I'm probably being a bit too harsh on the pricing, because he's not played in the top flight before. But he went and scored 15 goals in a team that got relegated. 15 goals. I mean, you're not got a better bargain than that. You can talk about other people, but no chance. Tony Cascarino, no, balls to you, Cascarino. You only scored 13 goals. This guy scored 15 in a relegated team. So happy days, Bernie Slaven. Big signing. And then we go on to the big man, John Aldridge.
Oh, what? Honestly, I really didn't see that one coming. I got to be honest with you.
Don't be sarcastic, bugger.
No, I honestly think I'm going to mention 2 strikers that I'm really surprised aren't in there, but carry on.
Well, John Aldridge was the 2nd top scorer in the league that season with 21 goals.
All right.
Liverpool brought back Ian Rush that season after he'd been abroad, and everyone will talk about Rush, but Aldridge season before was top scorer in the league. He knew he had Rush breathing down his neck because, well, there was Peter Beardsley along with them, and Beardsley probably was fancied to play by everyone. Little number 10 player, again, arguably midfield up front, who knows? But Aldridge scored an hat-trick first game of the season, so did Alan Smith at Arsenal. So them 2 started competing from day one. And Aldridge, 21 goals that season, only bettered by Alan Smith. Can't not have him in your team. And the guy's worth, a cool 10.5 million, I'd say.
I overreacted.
You did overreact big time. So yeah, you can't argue with that as a striker.
I can't argue with John Aldridge, but I can argue with where's Mark Hughes, where's Tony Cottee?
Well, put it this way, Dean Saunders probably cheaper than Cottee. Cottee costs a lot of minute money from West Ham. Mark Hughes, yeah, probably costs a bit of money. I fancied Saunders, to be fair. I didn't fancy Hughes in my side. It costs money. He's just come back from Barcelona. He's going to be more expensive. I didn't quite think I had that money to burn. Mark Hughes, obviously, Nigel Clough, Alan McInally. Yeah,
yes, unbelievable season.
Rob Fleck at Norwich, had a good season, for in terms of that. But yeah, those are my guys, and you can't argue with the stats. Saunders scored 14 goals in about 10 games less than all the others got their 14 goals in terms of Hughes and Nigel Clough and McInally. So, Saunders scored 14 goals in less games than David Speedy, Chris Waddle, Tony Cascarino, all those players, Alan Smith obviously didn't, but John Aldridge is the number one man up top for us with the others. But it was tough for the strikers. There's lots of options there, to be fair. Same with midfielders. You could have had a fair few different ones. I actually had options in midfield, like Ray Houghton was unlucky to miss out from Liverpool. The likes of Steve Hodge, Forest. Always liked Steve Hodge, to be fair. He was a good guy. There's no mention of a Brian Robson there, but he was probably injured all season, to be honest with you. So yeah, I think there was lots of players you could have looked at there. Stuart Ripley was a big one actually in midfield. He was playing at Middlesbrough that season and part of a relegated side, but did all right. He'd have probably been quite cheap. But yeah, lots of options. But my team, with your add-ons, I'm still 2.5 million under the 100 million. So like I said, I was pretty confident I had plenty to spare there.
Okay, so do you want to run through your team again for everyone?
Yeah, so Ryan Taylor was my backup keeper. Steve Sutton as my number one. Defenders, Steve Chettle, Stuart Pearce, both from Notts Forest, Steve Bruce, Gary Ablett, and Andy Linnigan. So then my 5 midfielders, we've got David Platt, Andy Townsend, Kevin Sheedy, Brian McClare, John Barnes. Save the best to last there. You happy now?
Yeah, loving that. Yeah.
Learning. And then front 3, Dean Saunders, Bernie Slaven, John Aldridge.
Nice. It's a good solid team, to be fair. I think we're both struggling a little bit for goalkeepers, aren't we? Because
Steve Sutton's the number one.
Okay. Well, let's start.
Since I didn't go for Bruce Grobbelaar, I was 17, but I didn't want to fork out 6.5 million for him.
No, fair enough. So, all right, let's start off with. I think we could probably take one goalkeeper each here, right? So you want to go Steve Sutton, but I think Brian Horn at Millwall, 11 clean sheets, 4.5 million. Millwall had a good season. I think that we're happy with that. Steve Sutton and Brian Horn, and Oggy can just have a rest.
Yeah, they can be the keepers. Yeah,
Oggy can be the goalkeeper coach. I mean, that's the job that he was made for.
Definitely.
Okay, so that's normally that was the easy one last time, if I remember rightly.
Yeah.
I think personally,
bet you do.
I think that Adams and Fenwick go into this team, but I don't think that I can justify Kilcline because his stats didn't really come up, or John Scales. And Ruddock could go in there as a cheap defender, but I'm happy to leave him out. So I think that Adams and Fenwick go in.
Fenwick definitely goes in. Yeah, definitely.
And so who else is coming in from your team? So Pearce is coming in, right? Steve Cheswell shouldn't come in for a start.
So Pearce comes in. Andy Linnigan comes in because I think Linnigan will be quite cheap as well.
Yeah,
got
okay.
Odd goals. Yeah, and you got to have Gary Ablett in there. 17 clean sheets.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I'm happy with that. All right, so Fenwick, Adams, Ablett, Pearce, and Linnigan. Okay, yeah, I'm happy with that. And then midfielders, go on, what are you thinking?
Well, Barnes is in there for definite.
I agreed, 100%, yeah.
Sheedy's in there for definite.
Okay.
David Platt's in there for definite because he's cheap.
All right. How much would Platt been?
It would have been about 7 million.
Okay. What did he do?
He's got 7 goals. Actually, no, he wouldn't. No, I think I put him up far less than that because it was his first season in the league.
Yeah,
so
I was going to say it's quite a lot.
Yeah, he was 5.5. Sorry, 5.5.
Okay, I'm happy for Platt to go in there over Dennis Wise.
No, I want Wise in there as well.
Really?
Platt, you can have Wise in there, and you can have one other.
Well, no, I mean Waddle's definitely in there. 14 goals, 100%.
Yeah, Waddles can go in there.
I want Gaza in there, but I know he doesn't justify his place in the team.
And you've got 27 goals with your 2, Waddle and Wise. There you go.
Yeah, I think Merson, young player of the year. Arsenal won the league. 8.5.
You can have Merson instead of Sheedy. I'll give you 3.
So I would be happy. I'll be happy with Sheedy in there. To be fair.
Well, so do we get rid of Platt then?
I think we should get rid of McClare for a starter.
Well, McClare's
he's on borrowed time anyway.
Although he's got 10 goals, But, okay, right. So Barnes is definitely in there for mine.
Waddle,
I'm giving him Waddle and Wise. You're definitely having in. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm having Platt in there because he's a cheap option as well.
All right.
We've got some cheap.
And then Paul Merson.
And then Paul Merson. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Brilliant. And I think our strikers are probably quite straightforward, right? So I would go with Smith, Aldridge, and Saunders. There you go. Perfect.
Although Slaven scored more goals, but I think Saunders, if he'd have played a full season, he'd have been there.
Saunders, I think Saunders got his move to Liverpool, didn't he, after this? And then he struggled at Liverpool, went to Villa, but he was watching the highlights. Every time he scored, I was thinking, God, is that? Oh yeah, of course he's playing for playing for Derby. Yeah. Unbelievable. Yeah. Some of his goals he scored that season.
I think if Saunders had had a full season in the top flight that year, he'd have scored 20 goals.
Definitely. Okay, so the final team, we've got Steve Sutton as our number 1 goalkeeper and our resident cricket all-rounder. We've got Brian Horn as our backup goalkeeper. We've got a goal-scoring penalty taker, Terry Fennick. We've got our defender and captain, Tony Adams, not official captain, but Arsenal captain. Okay, we've got our hard man, Stuart Pearce, right? Then we have got Andy Linnigan, the high riser, the guy who's come from nowhere to be a sensation. Then we've also got our main man, 17 clean sheets, Gary Ablett, who goes to the other side of the Mersey after this. Then we've got Chrissy Waddle, midfielder. Paul Merson, midfielder, young player of the year. Dennis Wise, our what we thought was going to be cheap but quite expensive set piece taker. Then we got who am I missing? We've got
John Barnes.
Yeah, John Barnes. Oh no, I wasn't forgetting him. Who's the other one?
David Platt. We've gone
David
for
Platt. Okay, our future England Maverick, and then our current England Maverick in John Barnes, who is basically the best player on the team without a doubt. And then we've got our 2 main goal scorers, our big man and little man combination in Alan Smith and John Aldridge. And then we've got
up top together.
100%. And then we've got our, again, up and coming, out of the blue, Dean Saunders. That's one hell of a formidable team. And personally, I think I'm actually shocked and happy that we've been able to come to that kind of conclusion so quickly, because last time it seemed a bit more difficult. But Brian McClare's happily sitting on the bench, not knowing whether he's going to come on as a midfielder or a striker. He's entertained by Neil Ruddock, who's probably pinching the back of his arm and Jenny just taking the piercing. And Gaz is probably halfway through a bottle of vodka. So personally, I think that's a really, really good team.
Definitely.
First things first, I'm gonna, get straight to the point, which is, if anyone listening to this has got any issues with this whatsoever and wants to disagree with us, please let us know on Twitter. My handle is at FPL_Southerner, and States is at _FPL Northerner. Please get in touch. Tell us your issues, your gripes with our team. Tell us who you would put in there. Give us some evidence to back it up, because I don't want any of this, oh, it's just because he's good. I want genuine evidence. I want to be trying to think about how we're going to fit this other player into our team.
Yeah, definitely.
But overall, I'm happy.
But all is not over yet, Heath. All is not over.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah,
I've created something magical for you to finish this podcast.
Of course. Yeah, I say best till last. This is the best till last. So State has very kindly put a quiz together for me, and yeah, it's a nice added bonus to add to this superb podcast. So State, hit me with it.
Most of these things has been mentioned during this podcast, which should mean that you should know the answers to a lot of these questions. Let's see how you work under pressure, though.
Bernie Slaven.
Not correct. You got the first question wrong, I'm afraid. And that was an easy one. You'd have got that one as well. So, Bernie Slaven did not win the FA Cup that season. Okay. So you've got one incorrect straight away. But be trying to be the cocky bugger. Okay. Serious, you're not getting that one now. You know who won the FA Cup that season?
Liverpool.
Yeah, but you don't get that because you said Bernie Slaven. So sorry.
Oh, come on.
Yeah, sorry. Can't do this. Right. So, right. 3 teams to be promoted to the league for this season were.
As in the season before, or they had come up during the season?
Up? Yeah, who came up to play in the league for 88-89 season from Division 2?
So it was Aston Villa, Millwall, and Middlesbrough.
Well done, correct. That was something, again, you mentioned earlier, so it's good. He's learned. He has gone out there, done some homework, guys. Look at this, man. Shame we got the first question wrong with Bernie Slaven, but, never mind. That'll come back and haunt you. Gaza became the first player to be signed between 2 English clubs for this amount of money. How much was that money?
I think it was 2 million.
Correct. Well done. Good work.
Yeah.
Good work. Now, on to who was shit this season. Who was relegated from the 88-89 season?
So it was Middlesbrough, West Ham, and Newcastle.
Yeah, it was. Fucking down the hammers. Yeah. Brilliant stuff. Okay, then. Who kept the most clean sheets out of the following 3 teams in this season? Manchester United, Arsenal, or Tottenham?
Wow. It's not. I know it's not Tottenham because I've already.
What you think? What you think. So.
I'll go with Manchester United.
Correct. They got 15 clean sheets. Arsenal only 14.
Yeah.
The adage 1-0 to the Arsenal wasn't good. Here we go. First £1 million player, Trevor Francis, played at which club during this season?
I think it was Queen's Park Rangers.
Correct.
I think he went on to be player manager.
Yeah, well done. You've done your homework. I like this. Okay. Ian Rush returned to Liverpool after 1 season away at which club?
Juventus.
Well done. Very, very good. Very good indeed. So, another easy one. If you get all these right, you've done brilliantly. But that's not gonna happen because Bernie Slaven obviously let you down. Arsenal beat Liverpool to win the title. In which minute did Alan Smith score that first goal in the game?
I think it was just before half time, I think. So I'm going to go with like the 43rd minute.
At 10 minutes on.
Oh, really? So it's just after? Oh, no, of course. Yeah, because
53 minutes.
George Graham famously said to them at 0-0, they'd done their job to keep Liverpool out. And you're right.
Yeah. 53rd minute, Alan Smith scored the first goal. But good thinking. You were close, but no cigar.
No cigar.
Final 2 questions. You've done really well, to be fair. I'm impressed with you. Well done.
I'll tell you what, that is very, very hard to get from State to be generous with his praise.
Isn't it strange how you're just so bad though at modern day football compared to the 80s stuff? It must mean that you're a bit older than what you're laying on. That's my only thought.
I think you're right. Yeah.
How many substitutes were allowed in a game per team?
As in how many could be used or how many could be sitting
How
there?
many substitutes could be used in a game by a team?
I think I'm going to go with 2.
Correct.
Yeah.
This was the first season that they allowed 2 in, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd been 1 up until that point, but they moved it up to 2. And then obviously in the 90s, it got moved up to 3. So yeah, well done. Final question. Who had the most teams in the top 10 from our North-South divide?
So I'm going to go with, I literally, I'm not going to look at my screen because I do have a league table behind our screen. That makes sense. So I'm not going to look at that. But I think it's something like Arsenal, Liverpool, Everton, and then you got Derby, you got Spurs, you've got Coventry. So there's 3 on 3. Who else have you got? Oh, Millwall. So it's 4-3 to the 7. Man United would 4-4. I tell you what, I'm gonna go with the Northern, but only because I'm thinking that there was quite a lot of dross down the bottom from the South.
Okay, you're wrong.
Oh, really?
It was a tie.
Okay. Trick question.
So
nice.
It wasn't a trick question at all.
QPR and Norwich City, they're the ones I'm missing. Oh, and Forest as well, yeah.
So the North had Liverpool, Forest, Norwich, Derby and Everton. Man United came 11th that season. And the South had Arsenal, Spurs, Coventry, QPR and Millwall. QPR are just like a sneaky team into that top 10, really. Not had much mention. But yeah, United went from being second, I believe, the season before to dropping to 11th, so yeah, bad year for them at the end of the day.
It was when Fergie was on the borrowed time around that period, wasn't he?
Yeah, and then Mark Robbins saved his butt the following season, I believe. So yeah, there you go. You got that one wrong, but overall, very good.
I would have got the Liverpool as well.
You would have done if you'd not been too eager. Yeah, you're right.
I'll tell you one thing. First of all, that was a great quiz, by the way. Really enjoyed that. But one thing I'd like to add to the research done for this podcast, I absolutely loved the commentary for most of the games that I watched. People like Brian Moore, Barry Davis, Alan Parry, even John Motson at points. But I think that's one thing that is just never quite right nowadays. The commentary in football nowadays. Martin Tyler actually did a lot of commentary in that as well, because I don't know if he was working for ITV or what, but he was commentating at that point as well, and very good. Probably a little bit more aggressive than he is now, but I do feel it's a bit depressing with commentary nowadays. I could be on my own here, but
it's taken a different stance now, hasn't it? There's different things than they look at. But yeah, I agree. Yeah, Brian Moore, quality, and yeah, if anyone wants to watch these clips, you can find them on YouTube, sort of BBC sort of season review, or what was it? How the title was decided, they call them, or something like that. You can watch them, and it's really good to see the commentary and stuff. You have literally just got the commentator basically on there. I mean, as much as I love Gary Neville, Carragher's and stuff like that, and their insight to the game's second to none. Don't get me wrong, but yeah, the commentary from back in the old days, can't beat it.
It's so good. But yeah, so I mean, is there anything else you want to add to this Team of the Past podcast?
Well, I just think it's like I said, it's been really good to look into it. It's been pushing our sort of research knowledge into a season I don't think either of us will have reviewed outside of the top 2, basically. The whole 88-89 story in terms of the league was all about Arsenal, Liverpool in that last game. Forget about the previous 37 league games. That didn't matter because you don't remember anything that happened because it all went down to that league game. Obviously there was other things that happened that year. The Hillsborough disaster being, the big thing, which probably, took the country by, by shock. That everything was there. My old man was at that game. To be fair, it was in the other end, and sort of saw it all happening. So, you know, you won't talk about it, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And rightly so. But you know, but yeah, as a season, you know, it's been really interesting to sort of delve into a little bit more about it outside of those major events, to be fair. The only disappointing was Grace, really, was that the Wednesday didn't get relegated that year. They were close to it, but managed to stay up as poxy as they ever are. But no, it was really good, you know, because there's certain players like, you know, that I've always thought, you know, Kevin Sheedy, I remember being a good player, but he was, you know, he played at like that top level for all of the 80s, you know, and you came across players like that, you know, watching some of the reviews and, you know, seeing some of the games, you know, just, you know, really, really good to sort of watch, seeing Barnsley, how good he really was at club level. I don't think he, barring that goal against Brazil, ever really replicated it fully for England, but at club level for Liverpool, he was just the man, wasn't he? And yeah, we got to see Gaza still sort of, you know, as that young sort of player that was just bringing that breath of fresh air to the football in that sort of era before he did it massively in the 1990 World Cup. And then after that, unfortunately, things didn't quite go to plan as he probably wanted overall, but there was some fantastic players there that, you know, just stalwarts of the game, and also gave people like Tony Adams, young centre half, dominating the game back then, and then he carried on dominating for another 10 years as a centre half for Arsenal.
I think it's like, especially because we're of the age that we're at, we probably take certain things for granted. But my understanding of people who are a little bit older than us, they always say that the 1990 World Cup was the turning point, because football was on the decline, in the sense of, I think people were a bit frustrated with how there was a lot of football violence in and around the grounds at that point, in, you know, everywhere really, unfortunately. And it took something like the Hillsborough disaster to turn things around, and they had to really put a case on to say we have to do something different here. But my understanding is that the Hillsborough disaster and the 1990 World Cup really changed English football. And it wasn't really until, if you think about the 1999 Champions League final, where England had a Champions League winner. And we used to dominate Europe before that in the
80s,
in the early 80s and 70s and stuff. And it wasn't until then that we got it back. So I think it's very interesting to look at it from a perspective of someone who was too young to really understand it at the time. But I would highly recommend, you know, like Stake said, to watch some of the highlights on YouTube. Just stick in 88, 89 season and just kind of get a vibe for it. So this has been a special, and what we're going to do is we're going to keep these for international breaks, where see it's a bit of a struggle to get through due to no FPL. Next international break, I'm sure we can come up with another team of the past. And yeah, we hope that you enjoyed this one. Again, any feedback, please, we mentioned our Twitter handles earlier, but please get in contact to let us know. We'd be really interested to find out what you think about our team that we picked and our individual North and South team. But yeah, I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. So yeah, from myself, Heath, it's a goodbye.
Yeah, and from me, stay as well. Enjoy the rest of your day, afternoon, evening, whichever it is you are when you're listening to this.